What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another Shadowlands video. I hope you're all doing very, very well. Grab your coffees, kick back, and relax. We're going to talk about a plus 19 Necrotic Wake that I did. This is our damage breakdown overall. We were actually first in damage, but, you know, I think there's obviously room for improvement, always room for improvement. This was, of course, last week, so I did it yesterday, so before the reset. So it was on a fortified week with explosives, which was so annoying. You really have to have a plan for how you're going to deal with explosives. And then raging. So those are the affixes, and obviously, of course, the seasonal one. But it was fortified raging explosives. Explosives are pretty annoying, and you have to have a way to deal with them. I helped to deal with some of them in this dungeon, but really the mage was the absolute hero of this dungeon. He did most of them, so really thankful for that. But we don't have them anymore, which is really nice. Now, also, on top of that, we ran Venthyr. We did run the Skybreakers build with Venthyr. So what's interesting about that is that we actually had Door of Shadows, and you're going to see that I skip a certain part in the Necrotic Wake dungeon without having to use a stealth pot, which is really nice. I haven't actually done that before yet. So Door of Shadows had a lot of use in this dungeon, was really, really great. And then, of course, Chain Harvest was just crazy. The off-healing from this thing is insane. It's just really, really good. I mean, I loved it. Like, I think it's really valuable, and it showed up a couple big times in this dungeon when we really needed it. On top of that, the very first boss fight, Blightborne, is an absolute hoot. It was crazy. The tank ended up pulling so many crazy things with the boss fight at the same time, so that was, like, super cool to see. So let's get into it. Let's talk about my build. What did we run? We ran Skybreakers here with Venthyr. That's the the most common combination, I would say, of, like, if you're going to do Skybreakers as Enhancement Shaman, you kind of have to go Venthyr. You can go Necrolord as well, but I think Venthyr is just better because you're getting the extra benefit of the Unity portion, which says whenever your Flame Shocks crit, you reduce the cooldown of Chain Harvest by 1 second, and your Flame Shocks are going to be critting all the time because they have 50% increased crit chance from Skybreakers. My phone's going freaking crazy here. Let's just put that over there. Okay. So that's the combo that you're looking for. You want to spread your Flame Shocks out with, like, Flame Shock plus Lava Lash, or just do a huge Chain Harvest. Chain Harvest will add Flame Shocks to everybody. They're all going to start critting, and they're all going to reduce the cooldown of Chain Harvest, which is really, really neat. So I'll show you the value of that when we get to the Blightborne boss fight. So that's the combo. That's the legendary that we're running. That's the covenant that we are. Here's the talents. Lashing Flames, Hot Hand. We did go Hailstorm this time instead of Fire Nova. I just wanted to give it a shot. So the last dungeon that we did Fire Nova, which is a pretty standard for your fire build. But this time we ran Frost Shock, and it was pretty good. I could have done better. I needed to cast it more times for sure. I didn't cast it nearly as much as I needed to, but we did in fact run the Frost Shock Hailstorm combo there. And then for our Conduits, we also ran Chilled to the Core. So we ran Chilled to the Core, Focus Lightning, and Magma Fist to get the extra Maelstrom generation. Because one thing that the fire builds do struggle with is generating Maelstrom weapon stacks. I have found that consistently. So it's really nice to have the Chilled to the Core plus Hailstorm Frost Shock thing going on, where you just press Frost Shock once and it just generates like 10 stacks of Maelstrom weapon for you, so you're never really worried about it. And then, of course, that helps to synergize with the 4-piece, which has a chance to summon a dog whenever you use a spender, right? So your Frost Shocks build those extra Maelstrom weapon stacks for you, and you get to summon dogs when you use your spenders, like Chain Lightning or whatever. Generally speaking, you're not pressing Storm Strike very much. You're pressing Lava Lash a lot more. You can see Storm Strike's all the way down here, only doing 5% of our damage. So because of that, because you're pressing Lava Lash more often, it just tends to not generate as many stacks of Maelstrom weapon. That's just the reality of it. So that's why I went with this build. So that's the build. Let's go check out the VOD. Let's get into it. Let me move over here. Boom, boom, boom. Make this big. So here's the opener. You're going to see there's some danger here with with Chain Harvest, because it always hits so incredibly hard in the opener. It's like you have to be kind of careful. So I end up getting attacked here by something. The tank doesn't quite have aggro, so I pop Chain Harvest, and I'm still taking damage because now I have a lot of threat. So I just pop my defensive. I actually pop Rocky. I pop everything here. And we pull it all in and we go crazy. The tank does a good job of getting aggro back, but unfortunately I wasn't. But look at Chain Harvest. It's already back. 30, 25, 17,
What are you doing? Are you doing
9, 6, and it's back. Number 2. Chain Harvest number 2.
I was also.
Let's keep an eye on that. One thing I was saying in my last video was that when you actually press, let me just back up 1 second here. When you actually press Lava Lash, it obviously spreads new Flame Shocks, right? Even if you have Flame Shocks out there, it will reapply a new Flame Shock and essentially refresh the duration. When it does that, it also massively reduces the cooldown of Chain Harvest because those can crit. That new application of the Flame Shock that you're adding by pressing Lava Lash can also crit. Watch this. Right now it's at 118. I have Lava Lash up. I press it. It went to 113. Watch this again. My Lava Lash is coming off cooldown. It's at 106 right now. The Chain Harvest cooldown's at 106. Watch it. I press it. It was at 103. It went from 103 to 59. So see how it does that? Based on the number of targets that you have left, depending on how many Flame Shocks you're able to like reapply, that reapplication also reduces the cooldown reduction of Chain Harvest. So not only do you have Flame Shock reducing the cooldown of Chain Harvest when every time it crits, Chain Harvest itself can reduce its own cooldown if its initial hit crits. Now the Lava Lash, every time you Lava Lash, it can also do it. So it's just like there's so much CDR. It's really, really cool getting that extra CDR on Chain Harvest, and it allows you to cast it many, many times. I've already cast it twice in this fight. I'm going to end up casting it a third time here in the opening pack. So 3 times I cast it on 1 pack. Boom, there it is again. We're doing 27k, like pretty good AoE for Enhanced Shaman. Honestly, it's perfectly fine. Other classes are always going to have better, like big AoE than us, and that's perfectly okay. That's just the way that it goes. So let's move to the next pack here. 4750, right here. Here's this next pack. This has two of the guys that will stun you, right? With the fluids, drain fluids. So you have to be really careful. You have to make sure that you're CCing them and killing them. We do get which is really good for cooldowns. We're doing about 24k here, and then our damage is going to spike. Unfortunately, the healer gets blapped there. I'm not sure why, but 27k, 28k, 29k. We get past the 30k mark here. 32k right there. You can see on the details. 32k. Like it just keeps going up, man. It's crazy. All the Flame Shocks ticking for critting like all the time. There's another Drain Fluids. Try to kick Drain Fluids and try to use your Cap Totem here, obviously, as much as you can. But our damage is exceptional. Really, really good. And on Fortified weeks,
because you're pugging.
You know, the mobs just last a lot longer, right? They're lasting like 20% longer, basically. And it's like it just gets so much value. It gives your Flame Shocks full duration to tick. Like they're on there for 18 seconds, and basically the mobs are going to last that long. So you get the full duration of that, which is really, really good. So that's it. Let's move forward to the boss fight. The Kyrian person is doing the Goliath here. Let me just set this up by saying this is the craziest boss fight I've ever done in a dungeon in my life. This tank is like absolute the ballsiest tank ever. It was wild. So he's like, make sure you lust. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So then I'm like, oh, he's not going to pull the boss. He's going to pull this. So I lust here. Okay, we're just going to kill this pack. It is Fortified week, right? So the mobs are more dangerous than the bosses, essentially. I try to kick Drain Fluids here. My Cap Totem's coming off cooldown. I do this. I drop Cap Totem. Then he pulls the boss in. All right. So now we have both going at the same time. Watch the healer here. The healer goes absolutely crazy because we can't get all the explosives. I get stuck down the hill. And I think the healer either can't see me or I forget what happened there. But anyway, I almost die on the brink of death. We pull it back. We're still killing these ads. Explosives are going off. The healer's doing 20k HPS. This guy was crazy. Really, really good. And the other, the DH and the mage are just doing crazy damage. I wasn't able to get my damage rolling because I messed up. I was trying to get explosives. I was trying to kick Drain Fluids. I was trying to just do whatever I could do to help. And I also got kind of stuck behind that cliff with the Drain Fluids on me, so nobody else was kicking it. So it's okay. It's just the way it goes sometimes. But this tank just pulls like the first 20% of the trash in this dungeon. He pulls it with this boss, which is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And it's probably what you have to do on these higher keys. And I just loved it. It worked really well. He knew exactly what he was doing. So what I want you to notice by the end of this fight is how many chain harvests we actually get to cast. It's absurd. I'm going to show you at the very end of the Blightborne fight. But it's pretty simple. Now we've gotten most of the trash down. It's basically just to back down to the boss. But this is exactly what you need to be doing as a tank in these kinds of dungeons, right? You have a mage and a DH and the shaman, me, I don't really matter. But the other two guys, they are going to be doing so much AoE damage. You want to focus in on your DPS characters that can do AoE damage. So what do? Just pull more trash, man. Instead of doing a single target boss fight, pull more trash so that your AoE guys can do their AoE things. Like DH especially, they're pressing 2 AoE buttons. They have like the death dance thing or death sweep where they're sweeping back and forth. That's an AoE button. And then I-beam is an AoE button. They have to press those buttons. Like, though that's part of their single target rotation as well. Mage as well has ice lances just cleaving to everybody. So you might as well just invest in that, right? You can see over the course of the entire fight, we do catch up in damage because our single target damage is much better than these other two guys. So it just helps us to catch up in the end. Look at that heal. Watch that really quick. I just want to show you that one more time. This is the other thing I'm going to highlight as well. The off healing from Chain Heal is absolutely disgusting, and everybody knows that. But he does a Heaving Wretch, and the priest and the mage are quite low. My Chain Harvest comes off cooldown. Boom! They're back to full health. It's just disgusting. It's a really, really good amount of healing. So we've caught right back up to the Demon Hunter. We're right at the top now, which is super cool. And our Chain Harvest, we've actually been able to cast it, I think, 5 times up to this point, and we do get a 6th cast of Chain Harvest on a boss fight. 6 casts of Chain Harvest in a 2 minute and 40 second boss fight. I looked up how long this boss fight was. 2 minutes and 40 seconds, 6 Chain Harvest. That's every 40 seconds. It's crazy. It's really good. So by the end of it, we were doing 18.1k.
Wow, we got through that boss fight. Holy crap.
Isn't that crazy? What a crazy boss fight. I've never had a boss fight like that. That was out of this world, man. We pulled 40% almost of the I think that boss fight was only about 20
20%
of the trash, but
with Blightborne basically.
yeah, we only pulled about 20 to 25% of the dungeon trash, but like just crazy. I mean, the DK knew what he wanted to do. He knew his limits, and he did it. And, like, that's the kind of shit that you want to see. Really, really cool. So, just amazing. I'm going to skip ahead to 54 here. We end up killing this pack. And then this next pack on Fortified, you never want to do this pack here, basically. This pack with the Necromancer is just a nightmare. So we skip it. And I don't have a pot. I just used my last Invis pot on the previous dungeon. So I just used Door of Shadows. That's some really cool tech. Honestly, like, that's amazing. And I actually have 2 charges of it because I'm running Theatar. So I thought that was really nice to just be like, I don't need an Invis pot. I can just use Door of Shadows. So very, very cool. We do kill these 2 guys. And then we pull this pack because we have a Kyrian person and we want to get the orbs. That's the other thing on the Blightborne boss fight. That's why he kept pulling more mobs into the Blightborne boss fight, because we had the orb running and it does AoE damage, big like arcane damage in an AoE circle. So it's pretty huge on Necrotic Wake to have a Kyrian person for these Goliath buffs, because I mean, not only can you pick up all the spears and the hammers and stuff and use them for the boss fights, but these Kyrian orbs are huge. We get the next Kyrian orb here. It lasts for a whole minute, right? So he's gonna pull these 2 into the next pack, I believe. My job here is to make sure that I kick this guy so that he can pull it into the next pack. Then we get to the next pack. Now we have the Kyrian orb just blapping everybody, right? Look how much damage the Kyrian weapons are doing. This is crazy, right? This is how you time this dungeon, like on a Fortified week especially. I mean, you should use this on every week, but just make sure that you're doing this stuff. It's really important. Then he just pulls it right into the next trash. I think the strategy here is to pull all of this stuff and then to skip the upcoming pull with the big Necromancer and all of his skeleton minions. That's the idea. We end up like not doing that because and we didn't have stealth pots, essentially, I think was the problem. So we have pulled a ton of the trash in this dungeon now. I think we're good to go for trash. So I don't think we have to pull this, but I don't have a potion, and other people didn't have pots either. And you don't really want to pull this pack on Fortified. Let me tell you, you do not want to pull this pack on Fortified. It's a bad idea. The biggest problem is because of explosives, actually. This has so many mobs over here that the explosives end up becoming like a massive issue. So we just decide we're just going to kill it because we've been talking about it for too long. So we just run in and kill it. But this is a very difficult pull that you don't want to do on explosive week or fortified week, basically. You just don't want to do it. So I kick this mage on the left side to make sure he gets pulled in. Then I focus the necromancer. This is where I can funnel all my damage. Even though I'm running more of an AoE build, I can funnel all my hot hand procs into here. So you'll see that the Chain Harvest healing here is also disgusting. It's really, really good to have the Chain Harvest healing. Everybody's in a lot of pain over the course of this fight. So look at the DH and me are kind of low. And then I just top everybody off right there, right before they take any more damage. So right now I'm doing 5.7k HPS. So then everybody gets kind of low here. We're getting the Necromancer down. Remember, if you focus the Necromancer down, everything else dies around him. So we're getting there, we're getting there, we're getting there. And then a couple of explosives start going off, and people start dying.
No.
The priest dies, but he's still got a Spirit of Redemption. I'm dead, which is fine.
Please res me.
But this gets so close. Watch the tank's health.
Oh, he's busy.
He gets down to 1k health. And then he like death strikes for his entire health bar, and we get it down. So they did a very good job. Again, you're really not supposed to pull this pack because of explosive and because of fortified, but we just kind of ran out of invis pots and stuff. So here's the Amarth boss fight. Generally speaking, you want to use like one spear down here, but you want to save the majority of your weapons for the upper for Stitchflesh. So I think the tank uses a spear here, and then I make a mistake. Well, not a mistake necessarily, but I use Chain Harvest right here because I do want to get my damage rolling, but I kept thinking to myself, should I save it for when the ads come out? And the answer to that is yes. So I kind of messed up because I used it right before the ads came out, so that's unfortunate. It just means you're not going to get the same kind of cooldown reduction on Chain Harvest, and you're not going to get the same kind of damage because it's only hitting 2 targets. So again, CC these ads, make sure that you stun them, and everything you can to stop them from casting Frostbolt Volley would be helpful, because it just does a lot of damage. But then they also need to die before this comes out, Final Harvest. So we get them down just as Final Harvest is coming off. So we got that was good. And then I have Chain Harvest coming off cooldown, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to save it this time. I'm going to save it for the ads. That's important. We end up lusting here, of course, and I think we have the Vi buff rolling as well, so we have a lot of haste right now. Look at the DH just spinning. So now I have Chain Harvest off cooldown, and I can press it and get full value right there. Boom. Damage goes way up. All the flame shocks are now out there. Flame shocks are now giving me the cooldown reduction. Look at Chain Harvest is already at 40 seconds, 30 seconds, 25. Look at the cooldown on that. 20 seconds. It's almost back, right? So that's really valuable. You got to hold on to it for those ads. And then we kill them and we get them down. Perfect. Now, one thing that I didn't realize at the time, you can see there's an orb right here on the tank, I believe. And then there's another orb over here. Usually, you would use this orb earlier in the dungeon. That's the sort of standard way of doing it. But on this week, on a fortified, on a 19, you need to save it for the upper room up above. So he's got an orb, and then we have a second orb here. I think the DH goes and grabs it, which is great. And then we have 2 orbs for this next room up above. Now, the next room up above on fortified is very dangerous, and it takes a long time to kill everything here. So you have to kind of pick and choose whichever packs you want to do. And the tank decides what he wants to do. I think he grabs the spare parts and just does a sort of a standard pull here at the opener. But again, if you pull too much trash up here, it'll spawn a ridiculous amount of explosives, and then you have more to deal with. So, like, it's really important that you be careful how much you're pulling up here. But we pull this, and then I think we get the patrol. We get these 3 guys by themselves. Then he wants us to orb, because the patrol pack is coming. They're going to come on the bottom of our screen here. Here comes the patrol pack. The DK wanted he wanted the DH to use his orb here, but the DH, like, didn't realize he had the orb, I don't think. So we don't end up using them here, which is okay. We end up killing this pack without the orb. And then we end up using both orbs on this next pack here. So I think we double orb this pack, and it just blows up. Look at the Kyrian weapon damage. 100k DPS, right? It's just crazy. So you can choose to do it however way you want. I think that the tank really wanted it on the previous pack because there's a tank buster like creation in there that just mutilates the tank and it does a lot of damage. So I think he wanted to get rid of that, but it doesn't really matter. We used it here and we ended up nuking them down, which is great. So just tackle this room however you want to tackle it, basically. Let's go to 112. Here's the Stitchflesh boss fight. Something incredibly amazing happens here. It's really, really cool. I'm going to show you when we get there. But, of course, I get the first arrow here that needs to go to the boss. This is the first hook. And I send it to the boss. We pull him down. And then we have a bunch of spears. I have a spear here, but I throw it like after the... I think after the tank uses it. So I was just trying to make sure I lined it up. So I end up pulling aggro. And I have to pop my defensive. Because I get slapped by Stitchflesh. Which is okay. The tank just has to reestablish aggro. It's not his fault. I just did like 100,000 damage to him with the spear, right? So then watch this. Sorry. I didn't get it in time. It happened so fast. Watch this. This next thing. This creation here, Stitchflesh creation, he's going to throw his next hook. And you want his next hook to hit Stitchflesh down here because it does a bunch of damage. Stitchflesh will cast Morbid Fixation, which happens right now. Here comes, look, you can see the hook that's lined up here, okay? Morbid Fixation is on me, which I didn't realize. So if I stay where I am right now, then Stitchflesh is going to walk out of the arrow range, and we're not going to get the hook correctly. So I need to actually move to the left here, but I don't realize till like the last second. So watch it happen right here. I'm like, oh crap, I moved to the left, and it weaves it in so that he doesn't move anywhere. He was about to move to the left, and the hook ends up connecting with him.
Oh man, that was a bend it like Beckham moment right there.
It might not have mattered, but I've seen this plenty of times. I've run this dungeon so many times. I've seen on this boss fight that people miss the hook by like inches, you know, because the Morbid Fixation will pull Stitchflesh out of it. So anyway, that was just a really fun moment that I wanted to highlight. Really, really cool. So we do end up getting him down again. I get the next hook, and we pull the boss down, and we kill him.
My mom doesn't have one. I do. My mom does.
And then we end up at the last boss, of course.
So we've taken a break from raiding because we kind of hit a
This
wall
is
on
Nalthor.
Haven.
So I have a hammer. I must have been the only one with a weapon left because nobody else is throwing a weapon, and I pull aggro right here, and the boss is like, yeah, we're not having any of that.
It's
And he
okay, but
slaps me. I'm down to 1k HP. Look at my HP down here. And then he ends up hitting me again, and I die because I didn't realize, so I was being an idiot there. So anyway, we do end up killing
let me get
Nalthor, which is perfectly... It's not a really difficult boss fight. You just have to make sure that you're dodging all the projectiles, of course. And that's it. So 117, this is it here. We finished the dungeon, and I end up getting 18 rating, which was crazy. We're almost at 2,800. We're getting there.
So I need to find sort of a couple.
So it's really, really good. We're going to look at the DPS breakdown. Let's jump back to here. We're sitting down now. Let's look at the DPS breakdown here. So again, with Skybreakers, it's going to be all about Flame Shock, right? Because Flame Shock is getting 50% more crit. That's your entire legendary. Now, but it's also going to be about Chain Harvest. Chain Harvest has its cooldown reduced every time those Flame Shocks are critting. So over the course of this dungeon, in a 26-minute dungeon, we did Chain Harvest on average, I think, every 40 seconds. That was about the cooldown that we had over the course of the dungeon. So, and of course, like I showed you before on the Blightborne fight in particular, we got to do it 6 times. Look at the Blightborne boss fight. Chain Harvest, we did it 6 times. Like, that's insane. That's so many times on a boss fight. And it had a couple crits for 30k, which means that it hit everybody for 30k, however many targets there were for 30k. Like, just insane. So, good damage overall. Flame Shock, Chain Harvest, Frost Shock is going to be up there, of course, because that was our AoE button that I chose. And, I should have pressed it more. You know, I think 135 casts of it was probably low. So definitely could have pressed it more, and I got to continue to work on that. But that's the DPS breakdown there. We did about 13.5k overall with Skybreakers as Venthyr. I think on a fortified week, man, it works really well. It works really, really well. I think on Tyrannical week, it's going to see like a little bit less value. I don't think it's actually bad. I think it's still fine. But obviously something like Primal Lava Actuators is going to get, I think, more value, particularly on a Tyrannical week, and maybe just in general, it would be a little bit better for you. So it just depends, though. I love this build. I think it worked really well. We had a couple of pulls where we're doing higher than 30k DPS on an AoE pack, which is really good for Enhancement Shaman. So I'm happy with it. I love the build. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Let me know what you think about Skybreakers and if you're still running it anymore. I think it's a lot of fun. So thank you guys so much for watching. Drop a like down below if you liked it. And, of course, subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet for more videos like this. I do a video every single day on World of Warcraft stuff, particularly for Enhancement Shaman. So thank you so much. We'll see you in the next one.